Hello, amazing children. This is Grandma Carla, and I am back with the stories of the Pilgrims. We're getting very close to the end of this book. Today we're going to read about colonial schools. In a very few years after the Pilgrims settled at Plymouth, there were many children in the colonies. Of course, these children went to school, but their school was not at all like ours. For the first few years, there was not a schoolhouse in New England. The children went to the home of one of the neighbors, who was teacher and housekeeper too. They sat on a long seat by the fireplace and studied. When their lessons were learned, they stood in a row with their toes on the crack in the floor and recited. The good woman went on with her spinning or weaving while they read aloud. The girls were taught to spin and sew, as well as to read and write. Each little girl took her box of sewing to school. In those days, nearly every little girl made a sampler of linen. On this sampler, she worked in colored silks, all the letters of the alphabet and the numbers to 10. She worked her name and age and the date on it, too. Have you ever seen any of these quaint old samplers? It took a child a long, long time to work all of the pretty stitches on one. After a few years, log schoolhouses were built, each having at one end a long chimney with a wide fireplace and oiled paper in the windows instead of glass. There were long benches made of logs split in two, running almost across the room. The largest boys and girls sat on higher back seats, and the little ones sat in front near the teacher. All studied their lessons aloud so the teacher might know that they were doing it well. The hum of their voices might be heard as far as the road. If you had been passing a school in those days, you would have thought there was a very large hive of bees buzzing near the school. The little ones learned their lessons from a little book called the New England Primer. It did not have pretty pictures and interesting stories in it, as our primers have. There was an odd little picture for each letter of the alphabet, and beside it, a rhyme. The children also learned many verses from the Bible. When a boy did not learn his lessons, he had to wear a tall paper hat called a dunce cap and stand on a stool in the corner. There were wide cracks between the logs of the schoolhouse, and in the winter the room, except for near the fire, was very cold. The parents of each child had to send a load of wood to heat the schoolhouse. If they did not do this, their child had to sit shivering in the coldest part of the room. His little hands would be blue and numb with the cold, and his stiff little feet would ache. This seems pretty hard, and I am sure the teacher must sometimes have brought the poor little fellow to a seat near the warm blaze. But they must have wood for the schoolhouse, and there was plenty of it in the forest nearby. All the people had to do was go to get it. If a man would not take the trouble to cut the wood and bring it to the schoolhouse, his little ones must go cold. No father could stand that, so the wood was usually brought within a few days. The parents of the children paid the teacher in corn, barley, and other things which they raised on their farms. Or, if the teacher were a man, the mothers sometimes wove cloth for his coat, or knitted stockings or mittens for him. Okay, so here are our comprehension questions. Where did the children first go to school? Where did the children first go to school? What did nearly every little girl make in those days? It was a sampler, wasn't it? What did nearly every little girl make in those days? Describe a log schoolhouse. See if you can do that. Describe a log schoolhouse. What did the children read from? What did the children read from? What did each family send to school, and how were the teachers paid? What did each family send to school, and how were the teachers paid? Okay, so here are some pictures. They stood in a row with their toes on a crack. So So there's the picture of the school teacher up at the front, but she's also taking care of her household chores, because remember, the first schools were just in a neighbor's house. And so she was spinning in between the lessons, wasn't she? And then this one says a colonial foot stove, and then we have a picture of one of the first schoolhouses. Okay, so there is a foot stove and one of the first schoolhouses that was actually made for school and was not just somebody's home. And I think this is so interesting. We're going to come back for our very last chapter in a little bit. This is Grandma Carla, and I love you.